All right, so you want to dive deep into nonverbal communication? Well, get ready because we've got an incredible source for you today.
Absolutely.
We're going to be looking at what everybody is saying,
Great book.
written by Joe Navarro,
Yes.
former FBI agent who spent a lot of time reading people, like for a living.
He did. Yeah.
So we're going to kind of unpack all of his incredible insights
Yeah.
and give you like a crash course in decoding human behavior,
I love that.
sort of like a backstage pass to the human psyche.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
So where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, I think the best place to start is understanding the science behind these nonverbal cues.
Okay.
They're not random, you know?
Right.
They're deeply rooted in the limbic system, which is kind of like your emotional control center.
Okay.
So this part of the brain, it reacts instinctively, like way before you even have time to think.
Right.
So it's really a direct line to a person's genuine emotions and intentions.
So it's like our bodies are constantly giving us away, even when we're trying to be like poker face.
Exactly. The limbic system is always on, constantly reacting to the world around us, broadcasting our true feelings.
Oh.
And it's not just about big, dramatic gestures either.
Okay.
Even the smallest movements can reveal volumes.
That's kind of unsettling, isn't it? I mean, it's like we're all walking around with these open books that anyone can read.
I think it's less about being unsettling and more about just being aware.
Okay.
Once you understand this, this language, you can actually use it to your advantage.
How so?
Well, imagine a doctor using these skills to understand a patient who's hesitant to share everything.
Okay.
Or think about Joe Navarro himself. He actually used nonverbal cues to foil a robbery.
Hold on. He stopped a robbery just by reading body language.
Yeah, he was working at his dad's hardware store, and he noticed this guy just kind of loitering near the cash register, and his eyes were fixed on the money. The guy's stance, his gaze, even the subtle tension in his body, it all just screamed intent, even though he wasn't saying a word.
Wow.
So Joe alerted his dad, and they were able to stop the robbery before it happened.
That's incredible. So understanding nonverbal communication, I mean, it's not just about, being a better people reader. It can actually be a powerful tool.
Absolutely. And the best part is you don't need to be an FBI agent to learn these skills.
Okay, good.
We're going to break it down for you, starting literally from the ground up with the feet and legs.
Really? I always thought the face was like the most expressive part of the body.
That's what most people think.
Yeah.
But, the face is actually easier to control.
Okay.
Remember, the limbic system is all about instinct.
Right.
So when it comes to revealing our true intentions, the feet are surprisingly honest.
Okay.
Joe calls them the canary in the coal mine of body language.
Tell me more about these telltale feet.
All right, well, let's start with a simple one. Have you ever noticed someone bouncing or wiggling their feet when they're excited?
Yeah.
Joe calls those happy feet.
Okay.
And they're kind of a dead giveaway that someone's excited, even if they're trying to maintain a poker face.
So even if they're trying to hide their excitement, their feet are betraying them.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's all about energy. The limbic system is reacting to that excitement.
Okay.
And, that energy has to go somewhere.
Right.
So the feet are kind of like an outlet, a way for the body to release that pent-up energy.
Interesting.
And it's not just about movement. Even the direction our feet point can be really revealing.
Oh, okay. So if someone's feet are pointed towards the door, they're probably ready to make a run for it.
Exactly. It's like a subtle sign of disengagement, like their body is already halfway out the door, even if they're still, engaged in the conversation.
I've definitely noticed that before, but I never really knew what it meant.
Yeah.
Now it makes so much sense. What other secrets are hiding down there?
Well, the expression light on their feet.
Yeah.
Turns out there's a scientific basis for that. When people are genuinely happy or excited, they literally seem to defy gravity.
Wait, are you serious? They actually float?
Maybe not literally, but they do stand taller. Their steps are lighter. It's like a little boost of joy is lifting them up.
I like that.
And it's not just about, big leaps or jumps. Even subtle shifts in posture can reveal these gravity-defying behaviors.
So if someone suddenly seems to stand a little taller after hearing good news, that's a good sign.
It is. It's their limbic system expressing that surge of positive emotion.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm starting to see the world in a whole new way now.
That's exactly it.
This is great.
Now, imagine you're in a sales meeting.
Okay.
If your client suddenly sits up straighter and their feet start bouncing a little, that might be your cue to close the deal.
Wow, I'm starting to see how this can be applied to, like, real-life situations. Okay, I have to ask, are there any foot behaviors that can, you know, reveal attraction?
Ah, the subtle dance of courtship.
Yeah, right.
So pay attention to foot play and leg positioning. If someone's like playing with their shoes, especially dangling it from their toes, it can be a playful way of saying, notice me.
Okay. So if they suddenly stop playing with their shoe and cross their legs away from me, it's game over.
It could be, especially if they combine that with other cues like turning away or breaking eye contact.
Yeah.
It's like a nonverbal thanks, but no thanks.
Got it. So we've covered happiness, excitement, and maybe a little flirting.
Yeah.
What else can we learn from someone's walk? Does that reveal anything?
Absolutely. Changes in walking style are crucial. They can be a big red flag that something has shifted internally.
Okay.
You know, a person who's usually upbeat might start walking with their shoulders slumped or their pace slowed if they've received bad news.
So it's less about a specific walking style and more about noticing any, like, sudden changes.
Precisely. It's like a barometer for their emotional state. If someone's walk suddenly becomes hesitant or hurried, it's a sign that something is up.
Hmm.
Maybe they just got bad news, or they're dreading a meeting, or they're feeling anxious about something.
What about when someone freezes up completely, like their feet are, like, glued to the floor? Is that always a bad sign?
Freezing is actually a fascinating limbic response. It's our primal instinct to avoid detection when we sense danger.
Like a deer in headlights.
Exactly.
Okay, but people don't usually freeze up in the middle of a conversation, do they?
Maybe not so dramatically, but you might notice someone suddenly lock their ankles, tuck their feet under their chair, or even shift their weight back when they're asked a difficult question or feel uncomfortable.
So it's like their body's trying to make itself as small as possible to 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 disappear from the spot.
Exactly. It's a subconscious attempt to minimize their exposure and avoid scrutiny. And when you combine that with other pacifying behaviors, it can be a strong indicator that they're feeling stressed or threatened.
Wow. This is incredible. I can't believe how much information we're constantly giving away with our feet and legs.
And that's just the beginning. Next, we're going to move up the body and explore the torso. It's the heart of nonverbal communication, and it's full of surprising insights.
Yeah, bring on the torso.
Yeah, the torso is fascinating, really, because it's home to so many of our vital organs.
Right.
So it's no surprise that it plays like a major role in nonverbal communication. It's all about protection,
Okay.
instinctive reactions to, the world around us.
So it's like our torso is this, like, walking, talking shield for our emotions.
Yeah, you could say that when we feel threatened, we instinctively protect our chest. It's a primal response, hardwired into our limbic system.
Okay.
And it's not just about like physical threats either.
Right.
We do it in social situations too,
Oh, okay.
often without even realizing it.
So, like, crossing our arms when we're feeling uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like creating a physical barrier between ourselves and, whatever's making us feel uneasy.
Makes sense.
But even subtle leans and shifts in posture can speak volumes about how someone is truly feeling.
Yeah, what about when someone leans in during a conversation? I've always heard that's a good sign. It shows they're interested in what you're saying.
You're right. Leaning towards someone generally indicates interest or agreement.
Okay.
It's like you're bridging the gap between you, both physically and, metaphorically.
Right.
On the other hand, leaning away signals discomfort or disagreement.
Okay.
It's a subtle way of creating distance.
So even if I'm trying to be polite and, nodding along, my torso might be telling a different story.
It might. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to these subtle cues.
Yeah. It's a bit unnerving.
It is. Joe Navarro talks about ventral denial and ventral exposure. It's all about how we instinctively protect our torso, our most vulnerable front, when we feel threatened.
I've never heard those terms before.
Okay, well, think about it this way. When we feel comfortable and open to someone, we tend to face them directly, exposing our ventral side.
Okay.
It's like a sign of trust.
Okay.
But when we feel uncomfortable or we disagree with someone, we instinctively turn away, shielding our ventral side.
Right.
It's a subtle but powerful way of saying, like, I'm not with you on this, even if our words are saying something else.
So someone could be nodding and agreeing with me, but if their torso is turned away, it might mean they're not actually on board with what I'm saying.
Exactly. It's a classic example of mixed signals.
Wow. This is a game changer.
Their words might be saying yes, but their body's saying no.
Right.
That's why it's so important to pay attention to the whole picture.
This makes me think about all those times I've been in meetings and noticed people like
Yeah.
shifting in their seats or like subtly turning away even while smiling and nodding. It's like their bodies were sending out a secret SOS signal.
Exactly. And once you start to recognize these signals, you can adjust your approach accordingly.
Okay.
Maybe you need to address their concerns more directly, or maybe you need to change your communication style to make them feel more comfortable.
Does Joe Navarro have any like real life examples of how this plays out in the book?
He does. He talks about an interview he conducted with a young man and his father about a potential crime,
Okay.
and the young man kept clutching a pillow to his chest throughout the interview.
Oh, wow.
But only when certain topics were discussed. It was a clear sign that those topics were making him feel, threatened or anxious, even though he wasn't verbally expressing those feelings.
So even something as simple as holding a pillow can be a clue.
Absolutely. And it's not just objects. We use our arms and hands to shield, too.
Oh.
Think about the classic arms crossed posture.
Yeah. It's like we're literally putting up a wall between ourselves and the world.
So we've talked about leaning, ventral denial, and shielding.
Uh,
What about when someone puffs up their chest? Is that always a dominance thing, like a gorilla beating its chest?
It can be, especially in men.
Yeah.
It's that primal instinct to make ourselves look bigger and more intimidating. But it can also be a sign of insecurity, like someone's trying to overcompensate for feeling small or inadequate.
So how do you tell the difference?
You're right. Context is key. You have to look at the whole picture.
Okay.
The situation, the relationship between the people, other nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
It's like putting together a puzzle, looking for patterns and consistency in their behavior.
This is making me reevaluate all my past interactions. I
Mhm.
want to dive into the arms and hands.
Okay.
They seem so expressive, but I feel like they're often overlooked.
You're right. The arms and hands are incredibly expressive.
Yeah.
And they often reveal subtle nuances that we miss when we're focused on the face. Let's start by thinking about, the natural tendencies of our arms.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Our arms are naturally drawn to things we like
Right.
and repelled by things we don't.
Right.
It's like a magnetic force field.
Oh, okay.
So pay attention to whether someone's arms are reaching out or pulling away.
So if someone's really engaged and enthusiastic about something, their arms will, naturally reach out, like they're trying to embrace it.
Exactly. It's like their body can't contain that positive energy. It
Right.
has to express itself through movement.
Okay.
On the other hand, if someone's uncomfortable or disagreeing with something, you'll instinctively see them pull their arms back, like they're protecting themselves.
This is making me so self-conscious about my own body language. I'm going to be analyzing every move I make from now on.
Don't overthink it. Just start paying attention to what your body's doing and what other people's bodies are doing. You'll be amazed at what you start to notice. Now, let's talk about some specific arm behaviors. One that's particularly fascinating and sometimes heartbreaking is what Joe calls the arm freeze.
Arm freeze. That sounds a little ominous. What is that?
It's exactly what it sounds like, a sudden restriction of arm movements. And it can be a sign of distress, especially in children.
Okay.
Joe noticed that abused children often restrict their arm movements when they're around their abusers.
Oh, wow.
It's like their limbic system is trying to make them invisible to avoid attracting any unwanted attention.
So it's like a survival mechanism for them.
Exactly. They've learned, often subconsciously, that movement makes them a target.
Right.
So they try to blend into the background.
Wow. That's really sad.
It is. It's a subtle but important cue that caring adults should be aware of.
I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that.
Yeah.
What about adults? Do they freeze their arms too, or is that mostly a childhood behavior?
Adults do it too, but usually for different reasons.
Ah.
You might see someone suddenly restrict their arm movements when they're feeling insecure or uncertain.
Okay.
It's like they're trying to control their emotions to keep them from spilling out.
So it's a way of regaining a sense of control when they're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's switch gears and talk about a more assertive arm behavior, what's known as the arms akimbo pose.
Okay.
This is when someone plants their hands on their hips, elbows out.
Oh, yeah, I see that all the time. It's like a superhero getting ready for battle.
Exactly. It's a way of asserting dominance and claiming territory.
Okay.
But it can also be a sign of concern or readiness to take action. It's like saying, I'm here, I'm in charge, and I'm ready to deal with whatever comes my way.
So like a parent who's about to lay down the law with their kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about another power play, but this one's a bit more subtle. Joe calls it the hooding effect.
Okay.
It's when someone leans back with their hands behind their head, elbows out, like they're trying to make themselves as big as possible.
I do that all the time when I'm relaxed. Does that mean I'm secretly a power-hungry supervillain?
Not necessarily. It can be a sign of relaxation and comfort, especially if it's accompanied by, other relaxed cues like a smile or open posture.
Okay.
But it can also be a subconscious way of claiming territory and projecting confidence.
Right.
It's like saying, I'm comfortable, I'm in control, and I'm not afraid to take up space.
So again, it all comes back to context. You have to look at the whole picture to really understand what's going on.
Exactly. Now let's move on to the hands. They're truly remarkable instruments.
Yeah.
Capable of conveying an incredible range of emotions and intentions.
I've always been fascinated by hands. They seem so expressive, yet they're often overlooked in conversations about body language.
You're right. And one of the most revealing hand behaviors is the handshake.
Yeah, the handshake.
It's like a mini personality assessment. It can tell you a lot about someone's confidence level, dominance, and even their emotional state.
I've always been told a firm handshake is important.
It is.
But is there more to it than that?
Yeah.
Like, what should we be looking for?
A lot more. A handshake is like a microcosm of nonverbal communication.
Okay.
You want to find that sweet spot between a firm, confident grip
Right.
and a gentle, welcoming touch.
Yeah.
It should be a balanced exchange of energy, not, a dominant struggle.
What are some handshake red flags that we should be aware of?
Well, watch out for the bone crusher.
Yeah.
That overly firm grip that leaves your hand aching.
Yeah.
It can be a sign of insecurity or overcompensation, like the person's trying too hard to prove themselves.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, a limp handshake can signal a lack of confidence or disinterest.
So aim for the Goldilocks handshake.
Yeah.
Not too firm, not too soft, but just right.
Exactly. And don't forget the importance of eye contact and a genuine smile.
Right?
It adds warmth and sincerity to the interaction.
I've definitely experienced both ends of the handshake spectrum. Now I'm curious, what other hand behaviors should we be paying attention to?
Pay attention to how someone uses their hands when they're talking.
Right.
Are they using open, expansive gestures?
Right.
Or are their hands kind of hidden away in their pockets?
Right, yeah.
Open gestures typically convey confidence and engagement,
Oh.
while hidden hands might signal insecurity or discomfort.
So someone who talks with their hands is generally more confident and engaged.
It's a good indicator.
Okay.
But again, context matters. Someone might be hiding their hands because they're cold, not because they're nervous.
That's true. What about fidgeting or playing with objects?
Yeah.
Is that always a bad sign?
Sure.
I know I tend to fidget when I'm nervous.
It depends. If someone is constantly fidgeting or playing with their jewelry, it could be a sign of anxiety or nervousness. But sometimes it's just a habit or a way to self-soothe. The key is to look for changes in behavior.
So if someone suddenly starts fidgeting when a specific topic comes up, it could be a sign that they're uncomfortable or trying to distract themselves.
Exactly. It's like their limbic system is leaking out their true feelings through their hands.
It's also fascinating. I never realized how much information our hands are constantly revealing about us.
We all have our tells.
Yeah?
The important thing is to become aware of them, both in ourselves and in others. Now, let's move on to the most complex and expressive part of the body, the face.
I'm ready to face the facts. Right? The face. It's, it's the part of the body we usually focus on when we're trying to read someone.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier it can be deceptive.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, the face is like a canvas for our emotions,
Yes.
right? Capable of expressing a vast range of feelings.
Right.
But here's the thing. We learn to control our facial expressions from a very young age.
Okay.
To mask our true feelings and present a certain image to the world. Think about it, we smile when we meet someone new, even if we're not feeling particularly happy.
Right, yeah.
We nod politely even when we disagree.
Right, so it's like we've all become these expert actors, like putting on a performance for the world.
In a way, yes. So while the face is incredibly expressive, it can also be misleading.
Okay.
That's why it's crucial to consider facial expressions in the context of, other nonverbal cues
Right.
to see if the face is telling the same story as the rest of the body.
So it's like a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture.
Precisely. We need to look for clusters of behaviors to see if there's consistency between the face, the body, and the overall context.
So what are some facial expressions that are like particularly revealing, even if they're subtle?
Well, one that people often overlook is pupil dilation.
Okay.
When we see something we like, our pupils instinctively widen. It's like our
Okay.
eyes are trying to take in more of what's pleasing.
Right.
And conversely, when we see something we dislike or
Mhm.
find threatening,
Mhm.
our pupils constrict.
So it's like a subconscious yes or no signal. Our eyes are literally giving us away. Exactly. And it's not just about, things we see.
Okay.
It applies to thoughts and emotions too. Joe tells a fascinating story in the book about uh, a spy who was being questioned about his associates,
Okay.
and they showed him photos of different people, and his pupils dilated when he saw photos of people he was close to,
Wow.
even though he denied knowing them.
So even if someone's words are saying one thing, their eyes might be telling a different story.
Absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
powerful reminder that our bodies often betray us, even when we try to maintain a poker face.
What about other eye behaviors, like squinting?
Yeah.
I always wondered, if squinting's a bad sign.
It often is. When we see something we don't like or disagree with, we instinctively squint, like we're trying to block it out.
Okay.
It's a subtle form of rejection or disapproval.
So if I'm in a meeting and I see someone squinting while I'm, presenting an idea, that could mean they're not on board.
It's a possibility. It could also mean they're simply trying to concentrate. Or, the lighting in the room is bothering them.
Right.
But if you notice it consistently when you're talking, it might be worth paying attention to.
Okay, I'll definitely be watching out for that. What about the eyebrows?
Yeah.
Are they as expressive as the eyes?
Definitely. Raised eyebrows usually indicate interest, surprise, or disbelief.
Okay.
It's like our face is opening up to take in new information.
Hmm.
Lowered eyebrows, on the other hand, often signal anger, concern, or concentration.
It seems like there are so many subtle variations in eyebrow movement.
There are.
How do you even keep track of them all?
It takes practice. But over time, you'll start to notice patterns
Okay.
and develop an intuitive sense of what different eyebrow movements mean. And don't forget to consider the intensity and duration of the movement. A quick flash of raised eyebrows might just be a sign of acknowledgement, while a prolonged furrowed brow could indicate deep thought or even distress.
It's like learning a whole new language. What about the mouth?
Yeah.
Seems like the lips are constantly sending out signals even when we're not talking.
The mouth is fascinating because it's so closely tied to our emotions. When we're happy and relaxed, our lips tend to be full and slightly parted.
Right.
But when we're stressed, anxious, or upset, our lips often tighten, disappear, or even purse.
So when someone's lips practically vanish when they're concentrating really hard.
Exactly. It's like
But-
their brain is so focused on the task at hand that it forgets to tell their lips to relax.
Right.
And watch out for lip compression or pursing, which can be a sign of disagreement or disapproval.
So if I'm trying to persuade someone and they start pursing their lips, it might mean they're not buying it.
It's a possibility, especially if it's combined with other negative cues like leaning away or crossing their arms. It's like their body is saying, I'm not convinced.
Wow. This is making me rethink all my past conversations and interactions.
Mm-hmm.
What about more aggressive lip behaviors?
Well, the sneer is a classic sign of contempt.
Okay.
It's when someone raises their upper lip on one side, exposing their teeth.
Yeah.
It's like a primitive baring of fangs,
Right.
and it conveys a powerful message of disgust or disrespect.
Yikes. I'll definitely be watching out for that one. What about nose flaring? Is that always a sign of anger?
Whoa.
I know I tend to flare my nostrils when I'm working out.
It's often associated with anger, but it can also be a sign of excitement or anticipation.
Okay.
It's like our body is preparing for action, whether it's, a fight, a flight, or something more pleasurable.
So context is key, as always.
Absolutely. And remember, there's no single telltale sign of lying or any other emotion.
Right.
We need to look for patterns of behavior,
Okay.
for clusters of cues that tell a consistent story across the face, the body, and the situation.
So it's like being a detective, piecing together all the clues to solve the mystery of what someone's really thinking and feeling.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the better you'll become at reading people. It's a skill that can enhance your personal and professional life in countless ways. From building stronger relationships to negotiating better deals to navigating tricky social situations.
I'm definitely feeling more confident in my ability to decode nonverbal cues. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I've learned a whole new language.
And the best part is the learning never stops. Now that you know what to look for, start paying attention to the nonverbal cues around you. You'll be amazed at what you discover. And who knows, you might even surprise yourself with your own hidden talents for reading people.
I can't wait to put all this knowledge into practice. Thanks for taking us on this fascinating deep dive into the world of nonverbal communication. It's been an
Yeah.
absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. Happy decoding.